Hello there, everybody. Welcome back to Mariner Mondays, the weekly Seattle Mariners show on Circling Seattle Sports. As always, Charles Hamaker, Brittany Wisner here with you. Uh, Jake is not here, at least for the moment. Scheduling again is tough. Normally, we record all of our weekly shows on Sundays, like all of them go on Sunday, but because the Kraken hosted the Calgary Flames and that game happened, which is a different story. Couldn't do that. And I didn't really want to record each show from like the press bridge up there while they're doing tours and stuff. So, um, Brittany, there's not a lot to talk about with the Mariners. A move that we have talked about on multiple occasions, whether it was last week's show with the awkward reunions or when Gavin Lux was still technically available. And I was like, well, do you want Gavin Lux or do you want Jorge Polanco? So we saw that coming. We didn't see them putting him at third base. I think it was Ken Rosenthal first that I saw who put this out about Polanco, and then I know Divish did as well. But the big thing about it was him playing third base. I remember being in the Kraken media room and seeing Jorge Polanco. I was like, okay, that makes sense. I go to put my graphic together and I see they want him to play third base. And I was like, oh, that is fascinating. So, quick, I mean, the details to this contract aren't inspiring, like anything crazy. It's a 1 year deal, $7.75 million, including 3.5 million in performance incentives, which is a decent amount in performance incentives, and a vesting option for the 2026 season. Also, the only other tidbit I think that's factually interesting is that Houston was expressing strong interest in Polanco, also for third base. I wonder how much of that was just trying to, have leverage over Alex Bregman.
Yeah,
And now it seems like Alex Bregman's going to go back to Houston, which, what a sad life. Um, yeah,
I'm still holding out
this,
hope that that doesn't happen.
I need Detroit to do something.
Yeah.
Like I'd be, anyway, Polo. I
Yeah.
don't know. I think more of it is what are your thoughts on him playing third at this point?
Um, well, questions. My first question is how put together is that knee? Um, which is apparently his left knee. So that makes a little bit more sense. Something we saw that Perry Hill will work on when guys are moving positions and switching around is getting them in their legs a whole lot more at third
Mm.
base to get that throw across the diamond. If you have a guy that doesn't have the best arm strength, Josh Rojas did not have the best arm strength. Um, and he did perfectly fine over there after his work with Perry Hill. So uh, how how put together is that knee is my first question. And is Perry Hill a complete miracle worker? We know that he is to a degree. We've seen the incredible stuff that he's done with players, but there are just some things that you can't completely fix. Looking at just pulling up fan graphs. So he posted -8
Oh,
defensive runs saved and -10 outs above average in 112 games at second base last season. So the -10 outs above average ranked in the second percentile for second baseman. And then his arm strength last year, which again, ideally, Perry Hill can work with him to make adjustments to improve that throwing across the diamond. But his arm strength, 75.6 miles an hour last year, would have ranked as the slowest among all major league third basemen. So there's some work to be done there, legit work. Now his range has we've seen really decline. Obviously, the injury did affect that, I would assume. So third base, you have to have less range, so that makes sense. Turning second, turning two was a struggle for him last year. So it introduces a whole other mess of things that he's going to have to get better at. And it'll save him a little bit of what he struggled with at second and then open up a whole other can of worms. So it'll be really interesting in spring training. It gives us something to, interesting storyline to watch and look forward to and see what kind of magic Perry Hill can create.
Yeah, this screams Perry Hill wizardry. I mean, I know I've lauded the miracle workings of Perry Hill in the past,
Mhm.
but like this is a different scenario, I think, than the last few third basemen he's worked with. Like, I don't think Eugenio, when he first got here, was dealing with anything or had like injury history like this
Mhm.
per se. Josh
No, no,
Rojas didn't have it.
no.
Those were both like standard athlete.
Yeah.
Well, standard athletes is one word. One of them had Corilla DeVille hair. God bless that man. I miss him. Um, Josh Rojas, like I get the argument like about his defense. I just don't think he did enough for you over a sustained period of time offensively, and it felt like you kind of knew who he was as a player. It's like you know what you're gonna get. I understand letting him go if you were going to get a legitimate upgrade. That was my hope
Mhm.
all off season. Um, I think Jorge Polanco can be a better player. I'm not saying a better defender. Um, so like I'm still gonna put my hope in the oh God, I need somebody to like I don't have one, but like the little Jesus
Yeah.
counts and it's Perry Hill. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. And we,
you know,
if there's
so
anyone you're going to put hope in, Perry Hill's a great
yeah,
person to do that with.
it's
So, I
you know,
mean,
it was interesting seeing Jorge's like power surge towards the end of the season and look like an actually decent hitter,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so I mean there are reasons for optimism and pessimism with this. It's optimism wise, hey, he's fully healthy now. Like again, Brittany and I were talking about this before we started. I'm like, is this a ploy? Is he actually fully healthy? If this has been something that's bothering him for years, why hasn't it been, why hasn't he gotten this surgery before?
Yeah.
Didn't it not get diagnosed before Seattle? Like, I don't know. That one kind of raised some eyebrows with us, even though because of my alopecia, you can barely see my eyebrows. Um, you know, like how much of this is leveraging being like, hey, as an agent, yes, of course, his knee is great. It's healthy. It's amazing. Look at, you've never seen a better knee.
Yeah.
Um,
The best knee you've ever seen.
of course, look at it. It's wonderful. You know, again, okay, I'll focus myself. Optimism wise, hey, you saw what he did at the end of the season. You've got Edgar to work with him. You've got Kevin Seitzer to work with him. And if you wanted to hear anybody sound like an old school guy, listen to the Hot Stove podcast. I was just like,
Oh
this
my
man,
gosh.
I would see this man in like an old barbecue place with a giant cowboy hat on. Did you heard?
Yeah, that combination is going to be a really interesting combination.
It's yeah, so we'll see how that's always good. That's gonna be fun. And the other piece of optimism defensively is Perry Hill will work magic. Pessimism wise, the knee isn't actually better. His range remains horrible, and his strikeout rate, which I think was at 29% last season, hangs around. So, there's that. And I think part of it is part of my intrigue with the infield now because it unfortunately, and the Times put this out, it seems like this lineup is set. They've got about $4 million left from their $15 million a little allowance to the piggy bank, their piggy bank. Um, and the reporting is that the Mariners are going to take that into the season and posture it to use into the summer.
Yeah.
So what interested me in Adam Jude's report about the lineup is that, it seems like you've got the platoon of Rayleigh Solano at first base. You've got Dylan Moore leading the charge at second, but Ryan Bliss will get time, I'm sure. Maybe Leo Rivas, second base. I just said second base. Shortstop is JP Crawford, of course. Um, and then third base, you've got Jorge Polanco. But what's interesting to me is everyone's talking about Cole Young, and that's fine. He could be called up later in the season. I imagine, kind of development wise, you'd want to give him the full year at AAA Tacoma. That's what Jude was reporting. A scout told him that he'd be best suited to spend the season in AAA. What was interesting to me, which was like the last sentence of the article, I'm like, this is a hell of a thing to leave at the bottom, is that the scout believes that Ben Williamson is more poised to make an impact sooner because of his quick rise through the minor leagues. And I'm like, oh, isn't that fascinating?
Yeah.
One, because
Yeah.
of who I'm talking with right now, but also, um, if say Ben Williamson has a great spring, he cracks the roster or he gets called up early into the season and earns a spot, like
Yeah.
legitimately earns a spot. Then you can, if you want, push Jorge Polanco to second base again and leave Dylan Moore to be your super utility guy again. Um, or
Yeah.
then it's if Ben Williamson outplays Jorge Polanco, you've got $11 million, not no, 11, $7 million just kind of sitting there, which, you know, so I don't know. I thought that part was interesting. I don't know if
It
it
is
comes to
interesting.
fruition.
Yeah, and as the biggest Ben believer that there is,
Yep.
uh, man, he would really have to take a huge jump in his power really fast, I feel like. So maybe someone sees that. I don't know. Defensively, I have no doubt that he could come up and hold his own at the big league level. The bat is where um, I'd like to see him really start to grow into his power. And that's kind of been the narrative around Cole Young a little bit too, is can he add a little bit of power? He's never going to be a huge power hitter. Um, Going back to Polo really quick, I
Mm.
just had the I'm looking at this roster or the lineup if we just do a mock lineup, and I still feel like they don't have enough lefties.
No.
I don't love that because that really is they need to have that, especially when they're playing at home in the cold in April and May. He ran a 37% K rate from the left side of the plate
Ooh.
last year. I did not realize it was that bad. Um, so was that impacted by injury? It's tough to say. Maybe. So typically, if you're battling a lower body injury, you're gonna see it affect kind of your quality of contact as opposed to overall strikeouts. So really have to see that trend not continue.
Yeah. Well, and then going looking at the lineup as well and the potential young guns that can make an impact. Tyler Locklear's name, I keep forgetting about Tyler Locklear, but I mean his his time at the major league
Yeah,
level was largely forgettable, and I mean if he can put it together, I mean
yeah,
it says that the Mariners would be willing to give him a part-time spot. I don't know how much he'd hey, if he comes out and he makes a contribution, sure, but I need to see it from him,
yeah.
So and it's just funny reading all of this stuff with Divish and Jude, and it's like I think the part that got me the most was the Mariners. Polanco was the Mariners' second offseason signing, and I'm like, we're in January. What a
That's
life to live.
rough.
What
Yeah,
a life
that
to live.
that bums me out what you just said.
Oh God.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was surprised honestly to hear like they're done. I thought that they would make a run at Justin Turner. It sounds like that's not going to happen. So it's now hey, pray and hope we are in it at the trade deadline is what it sounds like. And and your options are probably going to be a lot more at the trade deadline than they were this offseason, especially in terms of teams willing to take on prospects. I hope the third wild card has completely thrown a wrench in things.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it
I
has.
yeah, I say that, and then it wasn't really even the case this last trade deadline either. The fact that the Rays did
Mm.
what they did was kind of a surprise because they weren't totally out of it.
No, I like what is Tampa Bay doing? I don't. Yeah, I didn't.
It's Tampa
Things
Bay.
things said on multiple occasions. Yeah. I don't know. That was the thing is like they're like, oh, trade the prospects. I'm like, well, not that many teams want prospects right now. I'm like,
No,
force
no.
them. I'm like, if teams don't want to take the kids, they're not gonna take the kids. Like, I don't. This
Yeah,
isn't like a bidding war where you can just take more money out. Like that's just
yeah,
not how
yeah.
that works. So I don't know. It'll
So
people
we're
will have
hoping
their
and
opinions.
praying that they are in it at the trade deadline. Like
That's
that is, oh, can can Julio carry this team to be in it at the trade deadline? Is kind of what is happening here. Can you stay healthy in the
can he
starting
figure it
rotation?
out in the beginning of the year? What does Randy do?
Totally.
What does Victor look like this year?
Yeah,
Yeah, can the knock on wood.
I
Jeez.
can see this going well, and they get to the trade deadline, and there's hopefully a good handful of teams that are not, you know, in it for the third wild card and that are willing to move guys. And I can also see this being a 82 win team. Yeah.
Well,
So happy Monday.
uh, I guess with that, we'll look to something that nears closer and closer, which is spring training. Uh, when do pitchers and catchers report? Pitchers and catchers,
February 12th. But who's
days
counting?
until February 12th. 9 days, 9 days. Hello,
Yep.
hello, hello. Ooh. Yeah. The other really main piece of news we'll talk about is the Mariners' 31 invitations to spring training. So 16 pitchers, 15 positional players, 31 non-roster players were invited to spring training. I'll go down the list here. There's gonna be a lot of list reading. I'll probably put the list up on the screen and cover my bald head. But pitchers wise, Peyton Alford, Luis F. Castillo, not to be confused with Luis M. Castillo. Note that. Tyler Cleveland, Hunter Cranton is fun. Logan Evans, also very fun. Naftali Felez could be a good story. Josh Fleming, Shintaro Fujinami, can't wait to see him pump 90s. Brandon Garcia, also fun. Jesse Hahn, I don't recognize that name. Austin Kitchen, Sarin Lau, Casey Lawrence. Hey, you're back. Adonis Medina, Drew Pomeranz. Wow, another could be fun story. And Doris Valdez. Then position player wise, I know more of these names. With Michael Arroyo, Josh Karen, Connor Sharping, Nick Dunn, don't know that name. Colt Emerson, of course, Harry Ford, Lazaro Montes, Jacob Nottingham. Oh, the story and parable of Jacob
Welcome back.
Nottingham. Spencer Packard, who I forget exists sometimes. Nick Raposo, uh, another one of the few catcher pieces in this organization. Brock Rodden, Samad Taylor, Ryland. Oh, I forgot about Ryland Thomas. Wow, Jesus. God, they got him from the Mets last year. Yeah, I think in the Stanek deal. It wasn't that bad in AAA when I kept an eye on him. Ben Williamson, of course, and then Cole Young. Of the 31 invitees, 21 spent time in the Mariners organization during the 2024 season. And 12 of those invitees were ranked among Baseball America's top 30 Mariners prospects. So, I don't know. What do you think about this group of players that were invited? 12 of them have major league experience. Obviously, you're
Mhm.
looking at guys like Pomeranz and Velez, and I don't know who Jesse Hahn is. Again, I gotta
Mhm.
look. I'll look at that guy while you talk, but I don't know. It
Yeah.
seems like reliever wise, it's a lot of uh, veterans, and the infielders are like their kids.
Who will they find off the pile is the spring
Hmm.
training question. Last spring training, the guy that really caught people's eye, myself included, was Tyson Miller.
Yeah.
That's a whole road we won't go down, but uh, there's always one or two that are exciting and catch your eye. And is this the next Paul Sewald? We get to ask ourselves is always a fun question. So I completely understand why some fans are. not as excited as maybe you and I are for spring training, just due to the way this organization has handled this off season and the last
Hmm?
three off seasons.
Huh.
Totally understand that. For baseball nerds like myself and like you, spring training is always just exciting. There is always a level of naivete, probably, that we get to hold on to and get to believe for a few weeks that this is our year and so is really going to turn it around and Polanco's going to hit 20 bombs and Tyler Locklear is ready to go and we get to just believe all this in a lot of hope, and so I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited. I cannot wait for February 12th, and I'm really excited to see where Harry Ford is at. I've been seeing a
Hmm.
lot of his off-season work, some clips circulating around social media. I will be very interested in Cole Young and Ben Williamson for obvious reasons that we've discussed.
Hmm.
Um, and Colt Emerson, he is an electric, fun player. Him and Laz are years away from the big leagues, but it's fun to watch and imagine and dream of the future and what it could all potentially mean. And then the end of March and April comes around, and most of those hopes and dreams are washed away. That's okay. We at least get a good month of clinging on to some false hope, and I will fully embrace that.
I it's always funny when I had a buddy that is around when covering the Kraken, and he goes, "Oh, Charles, don't you know that they'll suck in the beginning months and they'll go on a semi heater in the summer?" I'm like, "I know. I've covered the team for the last 4 years and I've lived here my whole life. This isn't new information. I
Yeah.
don't know who you're talking to." Sorry, I went on. I don't know if you saw any facial expressions there. I was looking at Tyson Miller's Baseball Savant page.
Oh yeah, careful.
What? Uh, that's a discussion.
Yeah,
Not important. I don't.
that was a weird one.
Um, yeah, I don't know. Like, I'll say it again because we get weird comments about it, but don't get, both of us, like both of us here, Jake, like, I mean, it's very clear and evident, even with Divish, and Jude as well. Everyone knows it, like that this team has been disappointing in the way that they've lacked opening the checkbook, lacked, pushing themselves over the hump and
Mhm.
basically, flying by the seat of their pants. Like, I need to state that because, every once in a while with when we talk about, these sort of things, it gets some folks riled up and maybe it's just angry to be angry, and that's fine. I'm not gonna be your life coach. You're not paying me, so I'm not doing that. Um, Yeah, it's very disappointing. As a kid who did grow up here, I can go through the Facebook photos my dad has of me going to games and wearing Mariners stuff. So for the guy who said I didn't grow up here, you can eat shit. That's my one for the day. It's the morning, it's Monday. I'm
You
gonna
get
try to,
one.
I'm gonna limit myself.
You get one.
Um, but there's no time to sit and cry about it. This is professional sports. You have to go forward with what you know. That's why we've talked for weeks. Okay, here's what you have. How do you use it? Dylan Moore is best suited at second base. Yes, it's not the best thing in the world, but that's just how it is, right? Like, and so that's, yeah, you said it perfectly. Like, I understand there are people who are turned off more and more by this franchise, not the team, because it's not the players' fault for everything.
Yeah.
They might strike out in the field a lot, but they aren't the ones who are opening the checkbook, or lack thereof,
Yeah.
right? Like, it's the franchise. It is the ownership. As you can say, it's Jerry as well. But again, I will always just have issue with the lack of resource.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I look forward to spring training every year because I love baseball very deeply.
Hmm.
Um, it's a painful love. It's a labor of love.
Yeah.
Um, That's just how it is. It's unfortunate to an extent. I grew up with this sport. When I'm not covering the sport, I miss it. I gotta order my goddamn scorebook. Damn it.
Scorebook, don't, yep, order
Ah,
that.
I gotta do that
Yep.
soon. But
I
just
got mine ready to go.
ah,
Thank you, Jeff, for all the stickers.
Jeff's birthday yesterday. Yep.
Yep.
Love Jeff. Oh, they're all on the back of my laptop, so it's not gonna be any helpful to do that. Um, yeah, sorry to get like reflective, but that's what it is. I mean, people
It
ask all the
is,
time,
yeah.
what's your favorite sport to cover? It's always baseball. Like, and especially how much of a treat it is to watch this historic pitching. Like, I've
Mm-hmm.
loved like being able to learn more and more about pitching over the last few years because of, how great these pitchers have been, but also because guys like Bryce like talking about it, right? Like as
Yeah.
much as George kind of gets snarky or snappy sometimes, he'll talk about it too,
Yeah.
if he's in a good mood, right? Logan will talk about it. He'll just like kind of look like Big Bird doing it. So that's yeah, I think Brittany kind of encapsulated it perfectly. So I don't know. Like at least going back to the invitations. Yeah, again, you put it perfectly. Who makes the biggest splash or, in spring of the invite guys? I don't know how much run Evans or Garcia will get. I think those guys are more, I think it's better to maybe let them continue their development. But I don't know. They could surprise, right? Like I know both of
I
those guys were mentioned during the season, right?
yeah, I have a feeling we'll see Logan Evans at some point this year. I don't know that he'll break camp with us, but I have a feeling we'll see him at some point.
So there's that, and yeah, I mean, we mention her all the time, but Kate with Lookout Landing, her and I were at an event this past week, and she was saying, yeah, it's probably good to get the kids like from the Dominican or who aren't used to this weather up here, who, ideally will be a big leaguer here one day,
Mhm.
to get them up to Everett as quick as they can so they can get acclimated to how sh terrible it
It's
is
so
during
true. Oh my gosh, it's so true. Yeah.
so yeah, I gotta make it out to more Everett games.
Hmm.
Because I imagine Colton and Laz will still be there, right? Gotta go
Yeah.
see the kids. Um, obviously I can't go to Arkansas or Modesto. Be down well, and like I said last week, Tacoma will be a fun watch as well because of, Cole Young, Harry, I imagine.
Right.
And I don't think either would Evans or Garcia be in AAA?
It's a good question. They typically have liked to for pitchers grab them from Double A, and they've
Yeah.
skipped Triple A historically altogether
Yep.
for a variety of reasons, ballpark, etc. But yeah, that is a really good question. I think Logan Evans is close. I think he's getting there. Another, oh gosh, Oh, another name, and I think we mentioned him before, but Michael Arroyo
Hmm.
is one I'll be interested and excited to watch in the spring that I admittedly don't talk about enough. And honestly, he really wasn't on my radar a whole lot until I started watching Aqua Sox games regularly last season. And he might be one that's flying under the radar for a lot of us. So I'll be looking forward to watching him play too.
Yeah. And I think that was something we mentioned with him last week was that, he's a guy that flies under the radar. Like he puts together good numbers, but probably gets overshadowed by the Emersons, the Montez, guys like
Mhm.
that. So yeah, I mean, again, with this organization, like it's kind of funny. They're kind of like the Kraken in a different way. Obviously, hockey
Mm.
has the salary cap, but like they tend to draft well. Uh, they can make good trades. I was talking to someone about Ron Francis the other day, and he was like, he drafts well. The Mariners arguably draft well, right?
Yeah.
They can make some good trades, getting Castillo, right? I mean, everything they sent to Minnesota for Jorge Polanco kind of fell apart, which is kind of funny. Um, not at the expense of Justin Topa. I don't mean that. Sorry, Justin. They got Randy. You know what I'm saying? Like the
Yeah,
trades they made aren't typically that bad. They usually work out pretty well, decently. Um, they just can't be trusted to sign free agents, whether that's the Mariners not doing it at all or the Kraken giving way too much money. There's
yeah,
some similarities there. Um,
yeah. Gosh, I definitely see the parallels.
you know what I'm saying? It's
Hmm.
They're different situations and there's different reasons for why they do that. But so anyway, yeah, I don't know. There's not too much to say with those guys. Just I'm excited to watch the kids positionally and pitcher wise, like who of this name will Drew Pomeranz be pitching high leverage for the Mariners during the season? I don't know. Will Neftali Velez? I don't know. Uh,
It's possible. That's the beautiful thing about spring and spring training is it's that is totally possible. All those things are possible and on the table until they're not.
And that kind of goes back to Tacoma, talking about the Rainiers, obviously those position players I mentioned and Young and Ford, but there's going to be a handful of these relievers that end up in the Rainiers roster, right? Like they did last year. There was a bunch of guys down there that I was just like, wow, what a group of names. And speaking of Tacoma, we'll wrap up the show briefly with a piece of minor league news. Last week, the Tacoma Rainiers, to fill the spot of Mike Curto, who had been the Mariners, not the Mariners, the Tacoma Rainiers team broadcaster for, I believe, 26 years, Jesus, 25 seasons. Um, they hired Rylee Pay, becoming the first woman lead broadcaster in AAA baseball. It's got some good history. She came from the Portland Sea Dogs, AA affiliate team for the Boston Red Sox, where she was play-by-play and the media relations assistant. Her past experience before that's also interesting. She's got some Cape Cod League in there, the Northwoods League Collegiate Summer Ball, and she did some Arizona Fall League games. So that's some real like sicko baseball right there, which is pretty fun. Um, Tacoma team president Aaron Artman, I can't speak today, said that they were very thoughtful and purposeful, and I think the number was they interviewed 250 people for this role, and they landed on Rylee here. So it's cool to see. I mean, I got so used to hearing Mike call games, um, call games or when, a Mariners either prospect would come up to Tacoma or they'd have a rehab assignment looking
Yeah.
for his tweets. I'm like, all right, Mike, what's going on down in Tacoma? I have
Yeah.
no idea.
Yeah.
And going back to being around baseball, with my father who instilled this love with me. Like the amount of times he'd be at home and he'd have the Mike Curto's voice going for a Rainiers game. I just kind of got used to hearing him around. Not as much as I heard guys like Rick or Dave. Um,
He's legendary. He really is legendary. And if folks weren't tuned into the minor leagues, maybe they didn't get the absolute privilege of getting to listen to him and his knowledge too. Just an absolute wealth of
mhm.
knowledge. So he will absolutely be missed. And how cool for Rylee Pay. Congratulations to her. That is awesome. Women belong in sports.
Yeah, you don't need to go anywhere else to hear that from someone in this outlet. So I don't got anything else to say with that. Yeah, no, I mean it'll be interesting, and I mean especially with how much how exciting the Mariners prospects will be. She's going to be talking about some pieces
Yeah.
of this franchise's future.
Yep.
So yeah, that'll be fun. Exciting. I was kind of surprised, not because she's a woman, because she's so young. I was like, oh,
She is.
wow.
Yeah.
Um, that also leads me to wonder, Brittany, which we got to end the show, but what happens with the spot that Dave Sims leaves? Who takes that spot?
Yeah, that's interesting. I
Because do they
imagine
go
that Goldie
externally?
will expand his his role.
That makes sense.
And maybe they rotate Angie in a little bit more for color.
That's what I was thinking personally. Just I know that we get a lot of comments, and Lookout Landing does as well, about when Angie's on the broadcast, they seem to like that. So I feel like she's got a good energy. That's kind of what I need. I'm like, if you know what the hell you're talking about and your energy is good, I'm fine. I don't need you to
She
make
knows ball.
wisecrack jokes all the time. Just know what you're talking about
Mhm.
and have some good energy. And Angie
Mhm.
has that. And so, anyway, that'll wrap up our show. Fun to talk about the third base conundrum, Jorge Polanco's kneecap, uh, the long lost parable of Tyson Miller, uh, the kids in the organization, and then Rylee Pay, of course. God, I hope she
We
doesn't
need
watch the whole
spring. We need
episode.
spring,
We need to
man,
get
so
there.
bad.
We need to get there. So,
Yeah.
until we see you next week, which will be even closer to pitchers and catchers reporting, take care of yourselves, be well, and do whatever you can to make today a great day.
Hey, Charles.
Hey, Jen.
Hey, how about those Zaps?
Oh, I'm excited.
I know. Where are you going to watch all those away games, though?
Away games. Huh. I was thinking of coming here since, after all, Rough and Tumble is the home of Circling Seattle Sports.
I love that idea. Hope to see y'all here.